Putting on my top hat, tying up my white tie, brushing up my tail.
Welcome to Hatcast,
the podcast about hats.
I'm Charles Berman.
And I'm Carl Bernhardson.
And we're here to talk about hats this time.
Just this time.
Have we got a program for you?
I'm excited about it. It is seasonally appropriate. It's something that I've been getting more interested in over time, largely because of Charles. And Charles...
hats.
Yes, hats. No, we each had an equal amount of enthusiasm for hats before we got into making Hatcast.
Right, but this episode, now, if you're listening to this episode, you probably know what it's about because you have probably gone to your podcast.
Oh my goodness, it's right in the title.
Yes.
You know, I do this every time where I talk about like, oh, it's going to be really exciting. You're going to learn about the hat that we're going to reveal to you now. But it is the
There's
title.
nothing to look forward to.
Nothing
you know it already.
It's the title of the episode, and it must be getting tedious at this point. I'm sorry, dear listener.
Without further ado, we're talking about the baseball cap.
The cap that you would wear while playing baseball, or if you just want to keep the sun...
somehow evoke baseball.
Yep. Or have a logo that is not baseball related, but displayed on your forehead.
Yes. Now, before we do that, and there are other hats that can display logos, but certainly not as commonly as the baseball cap. But before we do that, we should talk about the hats that we wore today.
Yes. Today, actually, I didn't wear a hat. I left the house in a rush this morning, and I left my hat on the hook, and I didn't. I could talk about the hat I was going to wear.
Well, sure.
I was going to wear... my dear stalker.
Oh.
But then I didn't, so.
Well, the hat I actually wore today is this one, which is not a baseball cap.
Is this, it's like a flat cap, but with no bill? Oh, no, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, it's
it's a very floppy
hat. It's a very floppy hat with many panels.
Let's count the panels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And they're all different patterns. Like, this is a real hodgepodge of a hat.
Some of them are solid, and some of them are patterns.
That's true. All different. Yes.
It's a self-clashing hat, which I enjoy.
Right. You could match it with just about anything, though.
Yeah. It's got several different plaids and a few browns and a green button. The one I brought just because I wanted to be seasonal is the Phillies baseball cap in a variation which has a white top and a red brim, and a Phillies logo in red, which usually reverses the red and white on the actual hats that they wear on the field. This is fairly well used, and I think I got it at a thrift store, but it serves my purpose pretty well to demonstrate support of the Phillies,
right,
or to keep sun out of one's eyes when it's a sunny day. So the baseball cap...
I guess we should describe what it looks like
first. If you haven't seen one.
Right.
It's...
You never know.
Yeah. Maybe this isn't for... There might be people out there who are totally unfamiliar with hats that are listening to this program as a guide so that they can enter the hat world and be familiar with what these objects are that they see before.
Oh, I think this program has a definite educational component.
Oh, yeah. So a baseball cap is usually cotton, but it can be made of other things. It's used to be most commonly made of wool.
Wool, right,
yeah.
It seems like they would get a little hot.
Yeah, I would think so. I've seen one made of leather, which I would think would get very hot.
Yes.
And it has a stiff, I suppose it's cardboard
or plastic, I guess, nowadays.
Plastic brim in the front.
Sometimes called a bill.
Yes, which you can bend to at the sides, or you can not do that if you choose not to. And there's 5 panels on top. No, 6 panels on top.
Yeah.
And a button at the top, which can be a different color. And if you are on a playground and want to tease other children, you can hit them on the button and make it hurt. But you shouldn't do that.
I would not advise hitting children on the button at a playground.
Well, I just remember it being something that people did. I didn't do it myself.
Oh, okay. And I guess you could take the hat and use it to hit somebody with the button.
Well, that probably wouldn't be very efficacious, but it's also not nice.
Is that against the rules in baseball?
No, I don't know if there's a rule about that. I think there's a general rule against fighting. There is a rule in baseball that if you catch the ball in your hat, it is a ground rule triple for the batter.
Really?
Yes.
How did that come about?
I don't know. Probably someone did it, and it was determined to be not desirable.
This is where this is the part of the episode where it's going to become very obvious that there's a lopsided knowledge base about baseball. I like baseball. I enjoy sitting at the stadium while baseball is happening and chatting with my friends. But Charles has a substantial.
I've always loved to watch baseball. Yes, so I've always had many baseball hats. Have you worn baseball hats?
Yes, I have worn a baseball hat here and there. They're really practical when you're doing outdoors things like kayaking or sailing, because they are designed very specifically to stay out of the way for the most part,
right,
but keep the sun out of your eyes. So yeah, I do own some baseball hats. None of them from playing baseball, or none of them really related to a baseball team. Although I do want to get one for our local baseball team,
right,
which I'd like to support.
They're a common source of revenue for baseball teams because they are sold as souvenirs.
Right.
But this is one of the things about baseball hats. They were initially introduced for wearing while playing baseball. And they are still almost universally worn by baseball players when baseball is being played.
Right, there's no alternate headgear for baseball.
Well, there sort of is in certain circumstances. If you're out in the field playing left field, right field, center field, or what have you, you are going to be wearing the baseball hat. Unless it's very cold, in which case they give you a variation of it that has ear flaps.
Okay.
I've seen this in the World Series in October when it's very windy. The players will be wearing baseball hats with ear flaps on them.
Oh, that's funny.
You no longer wear it when you're batting because people were getting hit in the head and seriously injured.
Right, so they have to wear the helmet, which
yes,
kind of is the same shape as a baseball cap with ear flaps.
But it's a helmet. It's
right.
A different animal.
Hard plastic, yeah.
We might do a program on helmets.
Right, and we could talk about the baseball helmet.
Right, and I think helmets, it's up for debate whether you want to call them hats, and I think I would call them hats. They're just hats made of hard material.
Although they're often worn over other hats in that case, too.
They often are, yeah.
Which I guess makes them more exciting from a hat perspective.
It's fine. Headgear is often worn over other headgear. I hearken back to the tricorn hat episode. Hats were often worn over wigs.
Right.
Doesn't make the wig a hat, but it's fine to do that.
Right.
And there's a new development that if you are a pitcher and you are concerned about being hit in the head with baseball,
right,
you can wear a protective version of the baseball hat. And this is entirely optional. It's up to the pitcher who wants to do it. They don't tend to be popular because they look very silly.
They look completely ridiculous. But I get the idea. It's like half bicycle helmet, half baseball hat.
Yes, and it looks like the baseball hat has been magically expanded and distended somehow.
Yeah, kind of like a mushroom.
Yes.
You're wearing your baseball hat, and a mushroom has started growing from the top of your head and is expanding to fill the baseball hat.
Right, so a few pitchers have done it because they don't want to
die.
Yes, or be injured. Most have not because they don't want to look very, very silly.
Right.
Which this does have the unfortunate side effect of causing.
Yes.
But in general, the baseball hat is the preferred kind of hat for baseball. And it initially had only that association, baseball. I think in the last, especially I would say probably, and I haven't been alive since the 1890s, but probably since the 80s-ish, it's become more common for the baseball hat to be everyday wear outside of baseball contexts.
Right.
It was around before as something people wore, but it tended to evoke baseball.
Right.
And it's used to display images of other things.
Which is useful.
Yes.
And it's probably the most popularly worn hat by far.
I don't think there's any question. Yeah. It's a very casual hat. It's not a dress hat. But I think if you're wearing a baseball cap, it's almost a blank in hat terms. Because
no one's going to say, "Oh, look at Todd over there. Todd's wearing a hat.
A baseball cap."
Right.
Yes. It's probably the most blend into the background sort of hat.
Mm-hmm.
But you could also be rather loud with it and have strange things on it.
Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't be... I've definitely seen enough people who are, let's say they're leaving work and going to walk home or drive home, and they could be wearing a jacket and a tie from an office situation, and they'll put on a baseball cap for their walk to keep the sun or rain out.
I've seen that. It does look a little incongruous.
True, but it isn't the end of the world.
Right.
I wouldn't wear it with a full suit or evening wear. But.
Right. They're often sold as souvenirs of various non-baseball related things. Mm-hmm. If you are a fan of other sports than baseball, you can probably get a baseball cap of your favorite hockey or basketball or football or whatever sport it may be team.
Right. Like so you could get a hockey team baseball hat or a football team baseball hat.
Yes, you can.
Right.
I've seen these, and I even got for $1 at the thrift store a copy of the hockey team's baseball hat. And I went to a different hockey game and got a free baseball hat of the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Penguins.
Oh, huh.
You can get ones that are associated with plays or concerts that you've been to.
I actually, one of the baseball hats I have is a Shakespeare Festival baseball hat.
I have one too. I went to the Ontario Stratford Shakespeare Festival, and I got the 12th night hat, mm-hmm. which I'm not sure. It mainly the main device is the big number 12,
which makes it seem more sports related.
Yeah,
than it is.
And in small letters you can see it's night Stratford Shakespeare Festival.
Yeah, I my favorite baseball hat that I have is my National Train Day baseball hat.
Oh,
it has a badge on the front, and it just says National Train Day, May 8th, 2010. So it's one of those sort of hyper-specific hats, like your New York State Assembly hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, in the early days of baseball hats, they were a little bit differently designed than today. They were sort of flatter and floppier. If you look at images of 19th century baseball teams, there were many different varieties of hats, and some had sort of
a less rounded brim, more of a kind of like what you would imagine a conductor on a train wearing.
Yes, and much more cylindrical top of the hat. And actually, in the 1970s, the Pittsburgh Pirates brought back this design, the pillbox hat.
Really? Oh,
yes.
That's funny. I guess it didn't catch on.
It didn't catch on that much, although they're still manufactured for people who want to emulate the 1970s Pittsburgh Pirates by wearing that. They do have a certain charm to them, but I don't think I'm going to get one myself.
It's a good looking hat.
Yeah.
And if if that was the team that I decided to root for, I think I would get one. Yeah. But maybe the Rumble Ponies will have a flat hat to go along with their silly name.
Baseball caps are so ubiquitous that there are subdivisions of kinds of baseball hats that have their own whole bodies of research that one could do.
Really? I guess I had, in my head, I really only knew of like two types. I thought of sort of the old style, shorter brim, what you imagine in like 1908, a little bit floppy, kind of like a flat cap, but without the flap that snaps at the front.
Right.
And then the slightly bigger, better at blocking the sun, modern
Right.
version.
But there is, would you consider what is called the trucker hat to be a baseball hat?
That's true, yeah. I guess, and that's where the front part is foam and the back is mesh,
Mesh, yeah. And I always thought that it was a subdivision of baseball cap, mainly because the only ones I have had have been had baseball teams on them that were just old ones around from the 80s that baseball teams gave out.
It's just the hat made with a different material, and the materials they've made it with have changed over time. Like you said, started with wool and moved to cotton, and I'm sure synthetics now at this point, polyester.
But there are polyester ones, yeah. But I'm sure we could do an episode on the trucker hat.
Right, that's true because it has its own associations that aren't with baseball. But like I guess with trucking.
Wikipedia says in a very pontificating manner, there are 3 major types of baseball caps.
What Wikipedia is a good guide, but there are 3 types. Now that I see the list too, it's even more ridiculous.
Yes, because there are many more than 3.
The 3 types that Wikipedia is suggesting you can find are the snapback hat, the dad hat, I don't even know what that means, and the fitted hat. And these don't even sound like different. If I were to say different types of baseball cap, I would say like old-timey baseball cap, trucker baseball cap, and modern day baseball cap. I might classify it by the materials. That's true though. The snap, I guess, is Some have a snap, some don't.
Right, and
some are elastic. Some...
And I'll say the one that I brought is an older one, and it does have this adjustable back with snaps, and you can click them into holes. They're sort of buttons, and that's how you make it larger. And I have a pretty large head, so I usually make it the largest kind. And this was the older kind of way of doing it, and then they started to have a cotton strap with a buckle that you could use.
Right, which is a little more attractive.
Yes, but then I believe there's actually a certain amount of nostalgia value for some people to the kind with the snaps.
Right.
And so they've started making those for people who want the cachet of the older kind of hat. Mm-hmm. So I can see why they made that distinction. Then the dad hat, it says, is unstructured, low profile, I think meaning not a high crown.
Okay.
Curved brim, adjustable. And this is, I think, the most comfortable kind.
Right.
I don't think it actually causes one to become a father when you wear the hat.
No, but if I think about the type of baseball cap my dad wears, I guess that is it. You know, usually it doesn't have a logo on it. It's just sort of one that you've bought.
Well, they make ones with the logo. I that's my preferred kind, actually, just because it's floppier and more comfortable. I like it more. And then the last one is fitted hat. Flat brim, structured cap, high profile, not adjustable. And this is the kind that you'll find worn on the baseball field.
Right.
Because they make it in a hat size.
For your uniform.
Right. Although I've seen some baseball games where they have adjustable hats.
Could I go online and purchase a hat in my hat size?
Yes.
Okay.
Certainly, yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was something that you could really only get through like a specialty sports shop.
No, you can buy them, and they take very meticulous steps to tell you which ones are authentic as worn on the field, and they charge you a great deal for them.
Okay.
Which is, I think, a little bit topsy-turvy for an item of clothing that is usually known for its cheapness.
And oftentimes given away as a promotional item. Right?
Yes, yeah.
We're like, thanks for coming to my Roman coin exhibition. Here's my Roman coin themed hat.
I would like the Roman coin themed baseball hat. I've never seen one of those, but I would wear that.
Yeah. I bet we could have one made up. I bet if there were any listeners who really liked us, they could make one and send it to us.
Oh, I bet they could.
Yeah.
If you were
just not that I'm asking for that, but if it happened,
if someone happened to, I would be happy.
Yeah.
And you want to make us happy because then we'll keep making programs for you. And I bet you like the program because otherwise, why are you listening? If you don't like the show, you don't have to listen. You're already a ways in. If you don't like it, you could have turned off a while ago.
Yeah, you missed your chance to get off this boat.
Now, the associations of the baseball hat, I think back in the past, and even to this day, well, of course, the primary association is baseball.
Right. And I guess another association would be children, right?
Yes, I think it would.
Because this morning I was watching Leave It to Beaver before going to work, and they were wearing baseball caps. Those 1950s children.
Yes. Now, and I looked up. We've got some old references to baseball hats here. Harper's Round Table magazine from 1893 has an article called. And this was, if you wanted a really cheerful article in Harper's Roundtable, it's called Some Reminiscences of a Children's Hospital by James Eli Talley, M.D. And he's writing about, he says, let's go through the boys' ward. That pudgy fellow is Frank. He is always pale, but always fat and jolly, as though he's been lying in bed for months. His idea of the sum of human happiness is to be the possessor of a baseball cap and a whip. And if asked 40 times a day what his mother is going to bring him on visiting day, his roly-poly cheeks as often hide his eyes as he replies, a whoop and a baseball tap. So
that's the kind of hard-hitting journalism you just don't get anymore.
No, it's a little bit condescending towards this child.
Yeah, who's in the hospital.
Yes.
Apparently for a long period of time. But yeah, he's a child, and when is this article from?
This was 1893.
Okay. So even at that point, children were fond of the baseball hat.
Yes, and it was a thing known, but it's associated with children.
Right.
We've got an article from Munsey's magazine, also in 1893. I should say, no, this is not an article. This is a story called Devil Jim.
Oh.
And it says, with a view to enhancing his attractiveness in infantile eyes, he got to picking up stray articles of vivid coloring for his adornment. A bandana neckerchief came first. then a peaked baseball cap of red and white stripes. Next, a belt, which was only half a belt, the front being a sash. But the crowning acquisition was a small round pocket looking glass with a place in the rim for pins. This he wore on the left breast of his blouse, where the enlisted men wore their marksman badges. So someone is trying to appeal to infantile eyes here with some very strange items of clothing.
Yeah. But, I guess, children like little reflective things and baseball caps.
Yes. So baseball caps were, ever since the early years of baseball. And baseball really only came into its own as a sport after the Civil War.
Right.
As an organized matter.
Did it exist before then, or did it sort of come out of the Civil War?
The rules were codified after the Civil War. There have been bat and ball games since hundreds and hundreds of years.
People had sticks and round things.
Yeah. And baseball clearly has a common origin with cricket.
Right.
They're very different games, but there's clearly a basis in something similar.
Right. There's hitting a thing, and there's running, and there's...
Yeah. In baseball, you have 9 innings. In cricket, each team gets its innings. There's something going on here. They didn't just develop entirely divorced from each other.
Right.
So 1890s, as baseball has only been codified as baseball for a few decades. There's a novel called His One Fault by John Townsend Trowbridge from 1886. The same smile with which he had bidden her goodbye beneath those very trees, yet not quite the same. In his best attire, having exchanged his everyday clothes for his Sunday suit and his white baseball cap for a neat brown felt hat, likewise his mood of despair for one of hope and gladness, he appeared very much changed to her eyes. And yet she knew that smile. So the baseball cap is known as a thing people might go around wearing.
Right.
But even then, considered not one's best attire.
Right. You could be looking better. You could be wearing not a baseball cap.
I think these days, though, baseball caps have evolved to a point where they're not mainly associated only with children.
Right. No, I think plenty of adults, men and women, wear baseball caps without anybody, taking any... I think plenty of adults wear baseball caps without anyone batting an eye at it. Right?
Yes, I think so. And I think that they can be used to evoke particular sentiments, particular loyalties. But I think if you're wearing one with a fairly normal thing on it, if you're wearing one that says FBI, which they sell, or if you're wearing one that says, I talked last time about the CNN one.
Right.
If you're wearing one that says I love New York, people might think you're from New York. Well, it's like a t-shirt. It can have some very specific message on it, which people will react to in their own specific way.
Right. Well, and that the FBI and CNN one actually bring up an interesting point. They've become because they've always been part of a uniform. It's been used by companies as a uniform.
Oh, yeah.
It's used by some police departments. It's used by some branches of the military. Mm-hmm. Having replaced, the peaked cap.
Because it is sort of kepi-like, almost in its form, yeah.
And it's easy to take off and put back on and stash away somewhere. You can fold up the hat and put it in your pocket without worrying that you've ruined it.
Keeps the sun out of your eyes very well.
Yep.
I have one that I got at the Hartford Yard Goats, which is bright green and has a picture of a goat eating a baseball bat.
Oh, funny.
Which is the emblem of this team. And that tends to occasion comment because it's bright and has a picture of a goat eating a baseball bat, which is unusual enough that people will look a second time and make a comment.
Right.
If I wear the Phillies one, it doesn't usually get comments because...
people say, oh, that's a baseball hat.
Yes.
For a baseball team.
They know what the Phillies are.
That Charles likes.
Yes. I have one of the Syracuse Salt Cats, which is... I have one of the Syracuse Salt Cats, which is bright red and has a picture of a crazy-eyed cat eating a baseball.
Also would get some comments, I think.
Yes. So you can use them to display loyalty or membership of things like many clothing items, and if it's outlandish enough, you might certainly get comments.
Mm-hmm.
So let's rate the baseball cap.
All right. We start with style and then move on to practicality.
We may as well.
All right. I think that it's ubiquitous enough that you can't possibly call it unstylish, but
Right.
it isn't so perfect that you could wear it with anything. Right. It does not, unless it's part of your uniform. Like I could see let's say your uniform requires you to wear a collared shirt and a tie and a baseball cap, and it's all branded for the company you work for.
Right.
It would not be out of place. I could see, some sort of police agency dressing that way.
Right.
So it's incredibly versatile. It's like it will not make it at the most formal levels.
Right. I was going to say it's almost a stylistic blank.
Right.
I'm going to give it the baseball cap on its own, without giving more detail and saying this is a embellished baseball cap. This is a baseball cap with this particular design or color,
cap,
or this one is made in the style of the Kansas City Monarchs from 1940, whatever.
Right.
This is just the baseball cap on its own. I'm going to give a 5.
Yeah, and I think I have to agree.
Blank.
I think it is. It needs to be given a 5. We could talk, like I said, about specific baseball caps or styles of baseball caps, and they would get more or less points.
Because this is a much more diverse kind of hat in terms of the styles in which it's available than the.
Well, it's different than the bowler, right?
Right.
The bowler was as ubiquitous, but they were all the same.
They were mostly the same. Yeah,
it might be a different color, or you might have a band or a feather in it.
Right.
But that's it.
Variations were small. Now, I've seen a straw one, but that's very odd.
Right.
I've seen them in different colors, but really only brown would get worn other than black, and even
maybe
that
a
not very much.
deep navy,
right?
Or deep bottle green,
right, or gray. I've seen gray ones.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen bright green ones that are worn only on St. Patrick's Day.
Right.
But that's more of a novelty. And then you might have a feather. But that's about it. Baseball caps have a vast variety of ways you can wear them. Practicality, I'm going to give it very high.
I'm going to give it a 9.5.
Where's the 0.5 being removed for?
Just that it can't be... It's not so practical that you could wear it with anything, right? Like if I needed to keep the sun out of my eyes and wear a suit, I couldn't do it. Right, and I know that that's...
well, that's a style objection. I'm going to give it a 10 because I think that's a style objection.
I guess you're right. I shouldn't...
Well, I'm not here to change your view on it.
No. I'm notoriously wishy-washy. I do think you're right. I think it will keep the sun... Well, you know what, though? It's not perfect. And here's why. Here's why we removed that 0.5.
Uh-huh.
If you're wearing it to keep the sun off, it doesn't protect the back of your neck. And if you have short hair, you're going to get a burn on the back of your neck.
That's true. All right.
It isn't perfect. Your ears might get burnt. Yeah, you know what? I'm comfortable with the 9.5.
Yeah. Especially if you have someone holding a lighter up your ear while you're wearing it.
That would not work too great. You know the best thing for it, though, and you might agree, as someone who also wears glasses, if it's raining, it does what it needs to keep me
yes,
sighted.
That's right, yes.
I cannot stand going out in the drizzle in particular, and my glasses get completely covered in water, and I can't see, and the baseball cap is perfect for protecting me from the rain.
We'll have to do an episode just on the rain hat at some point, but that is a good use for it, and especially if it's raining and hot. Because I have that leather flat cap that I often wear in the rain just because it repels rain.
Right.
But that can be a very hot hat to wear.
And the way that the baseball cap brim can be bent completely around your glasses, it really is perfect. And that's why I like wearing it when I'm boating, because water, if it splashes up, it stops it from knocking my glasses off my face. Just adds a lot of protection there. So yeah, I'm sticking with the 9.5 just because it doesn't give complete sun protection. But yes, very practical. And you can, like I said before, it's extremely portable. It grows or shrinks with you if you have one of the snapback kinds. If your hair gets longer or your head gets bigger or smaller for some reason, which seems less likely than getting more hair. Right. But
well, that means that the baseball cap overall gets a 7.375, which is not bad.
No, not bad at all.
It's the most digits that any one of these has
This is the
so far.
First time we've gotten to 4 decimal points.
Yes.
And that is the true victory for the baseball cap.
Yes. Well, that's about all for the baseball cap.
Yeah.
If you listen next week, we'll talk about a different kind of hat.
We haven't decided yet. Believe it or not, we don't plan anything too far in advance.
As if you do, your plans can only be thwarted. Or realized, but it increases the chances it'll be thwarted if you have a plan.
I do know one thing I'm planning on, and that's going to see some baseball when it starts up next week.
That's right. All right. Well, if you'd like to get in touch with us to tell us something about baseball caps, other kinds of hats, or unrelated matters that don't have anything to do with hats, that makes it interesting that you chose us to tell them to. But the way to do it is go to your email program
and type in hatcast@yandex.com. That's YANDEX. And type your message and press send.
Yeah, when I was a child, my mother once called me down with a problem with the computer because she said that she couldn't send emails. And I said, what is it? And she said, I keep pressing send letter and it doesn't go. And I said, well, that's because it says send later.
So don't do that.
No.
But we would love to hear from you.
Press the one that says send, and then we'll read what you wrote. Goodbye.
Bye.
Casey was baseball mad, had the fever and had it bad. Just to root for the hometown crew every Sue. Katie Blue. On a Saturday, her young beau called to see if she'd like to go to see a show, but Miss Kate said no. I'll tell you what you can do. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.